Frank, welcome to Waterstones. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
Last time we saw you was at our Waterstones Children's Book Prize ceremony where you announced our overall winner, Mikey Please, author and illustrator of Cafe at the Edge of the Woods.
Yeah.
And you gave us a brilliant speech.
Oh, thanks.
And you also let us know a little bit about what you've been up to as our Waterstones Children's Laureate.
Right.
Would you mind telling our listeners here a little bit about what you've been up to?
Yeah, so I'm a middle grade writer, but for being the laureate, I've kind of focused on early years. So that's all new territory to me. And I've been in all kinds of places that I wouldn't normally go. I normally go to schools, but I've been in hospitals and I've been out with health visitors and I've been to prisons even. It's been a revelation, and I think the revelation is that reading makes a huge difference to everybody, but the earlier you read, the better.
100%.
Yeah, and we had a big conference where I kind of pulled together some of the best people that I'd met, and that was incredibly exciting. Michael Rosen came, and also Sam Wass, a great neuroscientist, came, so we just had it was wonderful.
Wow, what a room that must have been to be in.
It was brilliant, and we're writing a report that comes out in a few weeks, so you can look out for that, illustrated by Chris Riddell.
Oh,
of
wow.
course, like everything. Anything that stands still long enough is illustrated by Chris Riddell.
That just sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
As well as all of that, you've also brought us a brand new book, The Blockbusters, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Great.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit about how that story came to be?
How it came to be? Well, two things really. One is you're always kind of looking for a magic world, and it suddenly struck me that I'd been in and out of a magic world all my working life, which is a film set. And very few people get to go on a film set. A film set is such an exciting place to be. Or a kind of weird mixture of excitement and boredom, because most of it is just waiting around. But this whole kind of enchanted world that very few people visit, but is real, and it can be happening around the corner. So I just thought, about time I wrote about this, really.
Of course. And I mean, this story is just full of hope, adventure, family and friendship, and of course, like you say, the movie industry and Shakespeare comes into it too. But I believe this story was inspired by a sort of real life mix-up.
Yeah, so like the thing about a film set is that it is wonderful, it's exciting, it's a village, all kinds of stuff's going on, but you're not allowed on it. So I was kind of thinking, and I went to a wonderful school in Seacombe on the Wirral called Riverside Primary. I was thinking, how would I get these kids into that world? And then I remembered this bizarre thing that happened, which is that I was making a film in Northumberland actually, and there was a scene where a postman comes to the door and delivers a package. I don't know why we ever put those scenes in a script. They always get cut. But we'd sealed off the street, and the big film star was to answer the door. And this guy came to the security and said, "I'm the postman." And they let him through. And then they weren't ready for that shot.
No.
So they said, "Could you wait on this bus?" So there's like a bus, a catering bus, a double-decker bus with infinite amounts of food on. So he went on the bus and had this slap-up breakfast with a big film star. And then the actual actor postman turned up. So I just thought, he's had a great morning.
Yeah, what a day for him.
So you can kind of accidentally end up on a film set. And I thought, oh, that's it. So there's an accident where they kind of end up.
Yeah.
They've ended up on a film set by mistake.
Wow. I mean, what a day for that postman. I feel like the best day of
Cracking
life ever.
breakfast.
Yeah. Amazing. Of course, as well as Story of Life Swap, this story is set around Shakespeare and plays a big role in the story, especially taking place inside the new Shakespeare North Playhouse in Prescott.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's a location that I've been very involved with. It's a new theatre that's a replica of a cockpit theatre, an Elizabethan cockpit theatre, but it's in Prescott, which I don't want to be rude about Prescott, but nothing fantastically, it's not Venice, you know, and it's not London. It's a little town on the edge of Liverpool. But you open a door on this fantastic, it's exactly like you get onto the film set and suddenly you're in a magic world.
Yeah.
Or if you've ever been, like I was on the Doctor Who set, and the TARDIS, the entrance to the TARDIS, this very ordinary door in a hardboard wall. So you go into this municipal building, you open the door and suddenly you're in Elizabethan London.
Yeah.
It just seemed really, really exciting. And that school that I mentioned, Riverside Primary, I went to it, and you know, you never know how you're going to be greeted at a primary school. You could be being kept in reception, you know, being asked to produce photo ID, or you could be met by a brass band. It just depends. And Riverside Primary, I walked in to the hall a little bit late. They sang "What Can We Say Except You're Welcome" from Moana. I was already cracking up. And then these year sixes stood up and did "Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day?" And it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
And these words still really cut through. Do you know what I mean about... Should I tell you a little thing about why the Shakespeare thing?
Yeah.
I worked on the Olympic opening ceremony, and by the time it started, I knew everything. I knew how many millions of miles of LED, how many volunteers, how many costumes, blah, 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 how much pyro. And at the rehearsal, it all started. Kenneth Branagh stood up and said, you know, be not afraid, the isle is full of noises. And I looked at my daughter and she was absolutely in floods of tears. Because that line, you know, don't be afraid. And to think that like somebody from Birmingham 400 years ago could just put some ordinary words in an order that would cut through pyro, special effects, money, all, you know, pageantry that would still cut through.
Yeah.
Just thought, that's magic, isn't it? So I kind of wanted those kids to have access to this.
Yeah,
and I've done it in a mad way, because the film they're making is called Genius Squad, which is about what do you want? an intergalactic kraken that is collecting geniuses and collects the wrong Shakespeare, as it happens.
Well, yeah, I wonder what William Shakespeare would think of this new version. So obviously Shakespeare plays a big role in your life, and I guess that's why sort of you chose to make this story inspired by the children, and then of course you have the new theatre, so it's all come together.
Yeah.
Where would you say your love for Shakespeare began?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't sort of very big on Shakespeare growing up. I think that day at the Olympic opening ceremony was kind of revelatory. And also, one of my kids this is a long story, but went to see a Shakespeare play, and we'd never talked about it before. And he was like maybe 9, 10, and came back absolutely buzzing from it. And I thought about how, when I was taught Shakespeare at school, you had to decode it. You were supposed to know every word before you could enjoy it. And he didn't understand half of what was going on.
Yeah.
But he got the
He
kind
loved
of
it.
that buzzsaw of amazing firework words that were going on.
Yeah.
So that whole thing of like playing with words, which kids love, don't they? You know, kids play with words all the time.
Yeah.
And come up with weird conjunctions of words, and so I just thought, well, that's relatable.
What was the play that he saw?
You saw Henry V.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's kind of special in a way that you've written this story now set around Shakespeare, and you could say almost in a way that Shakespeare was kind of inspired by your children. By the love, seeing the love for it through your
definitely.
children.
So it was never a kind of academic thing.
Yeah.
It was always like play with words and the fun of words. And it is Shakespeare on a spaceship after all.
Well, yeah.
On a film set with a giant octopusy thing.
It's just magic. Of course, I would say, so the story takes place within the theatre, and this theatre is also set up to be a film set.
Yeah.
And within the book, you introduce us to lots of different roles within the film industry, which readers, especially young readers, might not be aware of at all.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about those roles and why you chose to include them?
And that's another thing to do with I always take my kids to film sets whenever I've got access to them. So they've been to Harry Potter sets and Paddington sets and stuff like that. And I remember my daughter Gabriella, who's a grown-up now, looking around and going, what are these jobs? And why haven't I heard about them? Because people do mad stuff on film sets. And I think people don't talk to kids enough about that. So I always, when I go to a school, talk about anything that you're interested in is probably happening on a film set. You know, if you want to be an electrician, people only talk about actors and directors. But if you want to be an electrician or a joiner, or you're interested in makeup or cooking or accountancy, any of those things is going on a film set, but in a kind of more interesting way. So, if you're an electrician, that's great. You know, fantastic. What a great skill to have. Yeah. But if you're an electrician on a film set, someone's going to say to you, I'm going to need electricity in the jungle. Can you sort that? And it's like, well, that is kind of amazing. Yeah. And they've all got these mad names as well, the gaffer and the best boy.
Gaffer, yeah, I don't think I'd really heard that term before when I was reading the book. I was like, oh, that's kind of what inspired this question. I was like, it's so interesting.
Gaffer, best boy, dolly. And the one that I love is Drape Master.
Drape Master.
Yeah, that is like a superpower, isn't it? Drape Master.
That sounds like sort of the most important role on set.
But it's amazing. It's like everything to do with textiles that is not costume. Yeah. So you could be kind of dressing medieval war horses, but you could also be in charge of putting up the huge, like 200-foot long green screens that we're going to project stuff on. Anything to do with cloth.
If you weren't a screenwriter, what do you think?
I think Drape Master's a great job, I have to say.
Yeah, I think that sounds really amazing. I'd like that job title too.
Yeah, if you're interested in flags, that's the one to go for.
Yeah, noted. Heard that, everyone. So speaking of creative roles, you have worked with the brilliant illustrator Steven Lenton for many of your books,
Yeah.
including the Blockbusters.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about your working relationship? How, like, do you work together? Is there crossover?
We don't spend a lot of time together. He lives in Brighton and I live in Liverpool, so we're literally diametrically opposite ends of the city, of the country. But yeah, so this comes from working in movies, but when I start a book, I do a scrapbook. It doesn't come from working on movies. I use it working on movies, but I got it from year 6, Sister Paul, year 6. She make us make these little scrapbooks.
Oh, yeah?
So when I start a new project, I always start with a little scrapbook. And when I've sort of nearly finished writing, I will post Stephen that scrapbook.
Yeah.
And loads of the things that kind of the story will have outgrown. But that's the kind of
So like sort of like a
mental
mood board, like
a
little
mood board.
snippets.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's
Like
so
a
interesting.
like a more babyish mood board.
I think that sounds great though. Also a nice way to sort of, obviously you have your finished product for your book, but also to have the scrapbook version at the beginning. It must be quite interesting to compare the two, how they change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's one for this that's lots of pictures of me on set, you know, what we were doing on set and how. Because when people write about film, it's always directors and actors. And that's not any of our happy memories are nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh wow. Do you have a favourite illustration?
I do, and it's relevant to what we've just said. I've got this brilliant. It's probably Stephen will hate this. It's probably not his best illustration. This is 3 beat up people looking in a mirror, but that's because on the set of Millions, there were kids. You know, there were two main characters are kids who had to have body doubles, so they had a lot of time to themselves, and every time they had some time to themselves, they'd go to makeup and say, "Can you make it look as though I've cut my head open?" Or can you make it look as though I'm bleeding?
Super gory.
Yeah, really gory. And then you'd call them on set and you'd have to say, go back, wash it off. So that's a really happy memory. And that's what my kids like being on set. It's like give me a big saw.
All the fun, all the behind the scenes, sort of like make yourself look as terrifying as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fun thing is you can wash it all off
You can wash it off, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's a fantastic illustration
Yeah, it is
too.
good.
Let's talk about the characters within the book. Of course, we have our lead boy, Rafa,
Yeah.
who is, I'd say this book is full of hope, and he sort of is championing that hope the whole way through.
Thanks.
He lives with his mum and his brother, and he's obviously sort of now spending time with his uncle, which we learn very early on. And even though in the midst of all the action and adventure that's happening with him winding up on a film set, taking over the body double role, he is actually still focused on reuniting his family. And that, I feel, for readers, they'll learn that that really is the most important thing in the world, is your friends and family and who's looking out for you.
Yeah.
What was it like sort of writing his character?
That's such a great thing. I mean, a lot of the kids I meet when I go to schools, and especially the last year as Laureate, their lives are very disrupted, you know, because a lot of them live in rented accommodation and the lease runs out and they've got to move and blah, 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 all that stuff. That story of like holding on to what's really important and you'll be fine seemed really powerful to me. And I met loads of kids who had that you know, that if you know you're loved, anything's kind of bearable and any adventure is therefore possible because you've got that courage of being loved. So I just wanted to celebrate that really.
Oh, it's like lovely because you also have, without giving too many spoilers, we also have the lovely character Quiz, who is looking out for Rafa throughout. And I'm wondering, why do you choose that relationship? Maybe how it turns out.
Well, we can't really talk about that without a big spoiler.
Yeah.
But that character who is endlessly asking questions, that's someone real that I know. It's a child in my family.
Yeah.
And that's often like seen as a bad thing, that they're constantly asking questions, why? And I just thought, I wanted to sort of have fun with that.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not a bad thing to keep asking questions. And she does ask mad questions and she never waits for you to answer.
Just keeps going on to the next.
So she's just called Quiz.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's lovely because also, that it's true, asking too many questions can be seen as an annoying thing, but actually it shows care and consideration and interest
wonder
in people's lives and wonder.
Yeah. Because as it turns out, these things are all new to Quiz. You don't quite know that yet, but like this world that she's in is completely amazing and weird to her.
So
she's incredibly excited by things like the middle aisle at Lidl. She's like, what is going on here?
Which I think we all are. I mean, that is an incredible
Middle
Lidl. We learned at the beginning of the book that Rafa's story has been made into a movie, into this blockbuster. And as a screenwriter who's had your work already adapted, and recently you worked with Michael Morpurgo adapting Kazuki's Kingdom.
Yes.
Would you like to see the Blockbusters adapted one day, maybe?
Well, that's always a double-edged thing because it changes so much. I mean, I worked on the script of I wrote the script of Millions, which is my book.
Yeah.
So that was a joy. It takes so long to get a movie made. So long. You've just mentioned making Kazuki's Kingdom with Michael Morpurgo. Michael was a young man when that came out. You know? It's like keep saying, "Oh, Michael Morpurgo's classic is now a film." It's like it wasn't a classic when we started. It had just come out. It took 15 years to get to the screen. So there's that side of it that is quite dispiriting. But we'd like, I think of all of them, Blockbusters, because it's a story within a story within a story with a twist.
Yeah.
It would be a fun movie, I think, to make.
It would be very fun, I think.
Because he keeps referring to the movie version of his life, and then you see the real version. So it'd be great to play with that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's already split up into scenes. Something I love is the chapters in the book, obviously being referred to as scenes. And Rafa's already set you up with the flashbacks and different things. So it's all there.
Yeah, he sees his life as a movie.
Which I think is also a nice way for kids to sort of romanticize their own lives.
Yeah.
Especially when times aren't necessarily easy for
them.
them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Of course, you've been championing kids' books for a very long time, long before you came our Waterstones Children's Laureate. And part of that also started with your fab podcast, Island of Brilliant, which you have with author-illustrator Nadia Shireen. Yeah. A lot of us here at Waterstones are a big fan of this podcast.
That's great to hear.
Can you tell us about how this came about?
Oh, it came about because just Nadia rang me up and said, I think someone needs to do a podcast about children's books. I think it should be you and me. And I was like,
done.
Oh, okay. I think I'd met her once.
Oh, really?
And I think I've only met her twice since then. Oh. But we do it because we do it online. You know, she lives in Brighton. Of course she does. All children's writers except for me live in Brighton.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But I think Nadia's the perfect person, really.
I mean, you're a fantastic duo. Just hearing you in conversation, it's
we're so
like,
different. And she's much younger than I am, and she's got that great background. She used to write for Smash Hits. So you're too young to remember Smash Hits, but it had this mad vocabulary of its own. What the jiggins is Morrissey up to now? It's like she can still do that.
Yeah.
And also, genuinely a fan.
Yeah.
You know, I think those Grimwood books are incredible. They're really, really special.
They are. We're big fans of them here at Waterstones too. So it's nice. You're almost like a fan of each other, and then you get to.
She's never said anything.
You get to be a fan
about me.
But you also get to be a fan of lots of incredible authors and illustrators that appear on the island.
Yeah.
Do you have any authors and illustrators you'd like to welcome to
like to have on? Well, that's a kind of dangerous question, isn't it? Who have we got coming on? We've got Ranger Hamza coming on.
Oh, nice.
Who'll be interesting because he's dyslexic and has come to writing books through photography. You know, he's a wildlife photographer. And also because my grandchildren are absolutely obsessed with him. So we're going to let them ask some of the questions. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that'll be great. And that'll really get you lots of good points.
But it's all been a buzz. Especially for me, because I'm not from a picture book background, and we've leaned heavily into that sort of picture book world. Just how much work goes into a great picture book is a revelation to me. You know, it's been amazing speaking to people like John Klassen or Liz Pichon, just who are very, very different, but just that process is so dense and rich and different for each of them. It's just wonderful to listen to.
Well, it's lovely hearing you get to talk to them whenever you have a new podcast episode, we're all sort of like talking about, did you hear? And the John Klassen one I've actually only listened to recently, but like you say, the work that goes into it, and it's so much more than just, you know, a few lines on a page. It's like a whole process that actually creates these stories that hold a lot.
Yeah, nothing's harder than simplicity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Moving on to your being Waterstones Children's Laureate 2024 to 2026. Something you've been keen to champion as Laureate is reading for pleasure. And I think that Blockbuster is going to be at the top of the list for a lot of young kids and, kids of all ages and adults. My reminder that everyone should be reading children's books, whatever the age. But do you have any tips for new readers and maybe new parents, guardians who are maybe struggling to find time for reading for pleasure within their routine?
Yeah, I think read something that you love. You know, it's got to be a shared moment, I think. I don't think you should be kind of trying to deliver books. And especially for parents of young children, like really young. Yeah. I think a great picture book isn't a meal, it's a recipe. You know, play with it. Yeah. So, I mean, this is all kind of, it's not new to me because I've got lots of kids, but they're grown up And it was fantastic to be kind of reminded that you can make Dear Zoo last for an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and as a dad,
Yeah.
like with little kids, sometimes you want to be with that child, but you kind of don't know what to do because they're not that communicative. But you know, using that book as a kind of script for play is wonderful.
Yeah.
And then read stuff that you like. I think, you know, if you laugh together, that's a huge thing. Or if you're scared together, that's a huge thing. Or if you go to Narnia or Middle Earth together. It's got to be something that you both love, I think.
Yeah, that shared experience, I think, is a great way of putting it.
Yeah, and value your own voice. You know, I mean, I love audiobooks, and like, there's some of my happiest reading memories are listening to Martin Jarvis reading Just William in the car, or Kenneth Williams, or whatever like that. But there's something very powerful about your own voice with your child. You know, I'm always saying this, but my dad had dementia, and he was completely lost. But if I read to him, I mean, he wasn't following the story, but we were in the same space for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's because he knew my voice, and it was wonderful. You know, you're laying down the foundations of a lasting thing if you share your voice.
Yeah, definitely. I think back to my own childhood and my story time with my parents, and we joke about it now, but there's certain characters that their names they would get completely wrong, but it didn't matter in the moment because that's how I learned the story, and that's what I knew the characters as. And then I remember years later learning that their names were completely different, and I was like, oh well, it didn't affect the story and it didn't matter. And it was just like that memory of reading together and just having that shared.
There's a really good memory of mine is that my mum used to read to her dad when she was, I mean, I never met her dad, but he died, you know, he was lost at sea long ago. But that there's a story of her reading the newspaper to him and talking about Al Cap 1, which turned out to be Al Capone.
So there we go. But it still serves a lovely memory.
It's great.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what matters.
yeah.
Now, before we finish, I have a little quick fire round for you.
This is like Mastermind.
Yes, let's see what you think of these. Favourite Shakespeare play?
The Tempest, by Miles.
Favourite place to read?
Oh, on a train.
Favourite chapter in your new book?
Oh gosh.
Or scene, I should say.
I love it when they first meet Uncle Miles, who's going to look after them and is not at all interested in looking after them.
Reading at night or reading in the morning?
Oh, I do read at night, but reading in the morning is very special.
Hero or villain?
Hero, actually. I know everyone says villain, but think about Wesley and Princess Bride. That's who you want to be.
Favourite bedtime story to read to your kids?
Well, it depends how old the kids are. But
let's go picture book.
Picture book, Why the Wild Things Are. Oh no, actually, do you know what? I mean, these are all classics, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tiger Came to Tea.
Oh.
Because if you're talking about heroes, their dad taking everyone out for a meal after the tiger has eaten all the food and drink, that's a good one. That really is a goal. That is a role model, I think. And then I Want My Hat Back because it's so scary.
Yeah. Movie first or book first?
Oh. I'm going to say movie first.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to say movie first.
Okay.
Because I've been led to books by some great movies.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Favourite book?
Come on, you can't ask me that.
No, okay.
No, go on, I will say it. I think for, like, a book that, this is so obscure, but a book that I can pick up and feel refreshed by without even reading it is a little book of Joan Aiken's short stories called The Small Pinch of Weather, which contains a story called The Cereal Garden, which, I put it to you, is the most romantic story ever written.
Noted. Okay.
And also it smells really nice, that book. But
your book.
That's my specific
That's your
copy.
specific book. Prescott or Hollywood?
Oh, well, it's there. I've chosen it, haven't I? Prescott.
Yeah, Prescott.
Yeah.
Sea scooter or collapsible hot tub?
Oh, I'm going to say sea scooter.
Sea scooter.
Yeah, cold water's better than hot water.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so
Brilliant.
much for your time, Frank. It's been so fun.
This was joyous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.